here. It's been a hell of a week. It's been lots of fun, lots of late night. So we didn't get the wiring loom until last Friday. We put it in Friday night, Saturday morning, Sunday. We were still putting the car together. They had a few teething issues, especially with the PDM, getting the cam bus to torque, getting things to fire up, wake up and work. There's so much more involved than what we probably shown, unfortunately, but we'll go over everything. After we got the wiring loom in it, there was just a few teething issues. We had no ignition, no start, no crank off the key. Long story short, we just used the PDM to fire everything, and I love it. It is so good. So we've got the Emtron 8-button CAN keypad. We use that keypad to start the car, stop the car, launch control, boost over gear control. All that is through the CAN bus on the keypad. Now, when we first got it down to Ramsdell Racing, the tuner, we had to go through all those electrical gremlins, one being that the gear position sensor in the Hollinger wouldn't work. Luckily, the sensor for the gear pot is actually a dual sensor, so there's a spare wire there that we could use to fix that. The EGTs, I put my hand up, I wired them backwards. When you've got a red wire and a yellow wire, I thought red was positive and yellow was earth, but it's not. Earth is actually red, and yellow in this case is positive. So completely backwards, but I take full responsibility for that, my bad. So we got the EGTs working. We also got the gear position sensor working, which is great. So the car, we got a really good tune in it. Awesome to drive. It was a full nut and bolt, stripped down rebuild, and then if I think about it, 3 weeks ago this thing was pretty much had no engine in it and nothing done, no turbo, no EGTs. The rear subframe was half out. So like in the last 3 weeks, and we have made a massive effort to get it done, and I'm pretty proud. I'm proud of it. Cooling issues. So I thought it was going to be the radiator fan. As you guys know, we couldn't put the two fans in on the Frenchie's Performance Garage power steering kit, which brings it sort of a belt step forward. So all we did was remove one fan, cover up that hole. We then used the aircon fan in the front, driven by the PDM, to push air through the radiator, and then it was extracted out on the left hand side by the other fan, and it actually works quite well. So I probably wouldn't track the car, but we could control temperature just by having those two fans, which is pretty incredible. And that's a testament, 1, to the fan, 2, to the PDM, and I guess the radiator and Frenchie's Performance Garage setup worked out really well. So the only thing is probably because I used a Hypertune radiator and then I just used a factory Nismo intake planner. With the Hypertune intake manifold, it has coolant ports coming from the manifold to bleed it back to the swell pot and then to the radiator. Whereas I used a Nismo intake manifold, which if I jump backwards, that manifold and that radiator did not line up, and as you guys would have seen, I had to do massive adjustments to that radiator and the Nismo intake pipes or intake plenum to get it work. Now, the Raceworks Wigan style clamps, absolutely fantastic. We had no boost loss, they didn't move, they didn't leak, it was absolutely mint. Raceworks lower radiator hose, which is a -20 AN, perfect. It wasn't too bad to work with. I know I carried on about it when I was doing it, but I had to take it off when we were at the dyno. I had to drop the coolant out of the car and take that lower radiator hose off, and I had no issues with it at all. It just undone straight away. It went straight back on. It was all in its shape, like it had shaped itself. So yeah, if you're going to use AN lines on your radiator or cooling system, highly recommend it. The Hypertune top hose, which is a solid hose, that is also fantastic, but it took a lot of work to get it there. I think I went through about 6 different pipes before I was happy with the finished product and got it to sit in perfect. And when you use those clamps, you do need to get it perfect. They don't have much of a give in the clamps before it'll leak. So luckily we had no coolant leaks whatsoever when we put coolant in the car. We also had no oil leaks, which is awesome. There's so much more involved than what you think when it comes to wiring a car, especially a GTR when you're trying to use new technology in an old car. You know, new PDM, so with pulse width modulated the attessor pump, and that works awesome. Like, this thing is lethal. On takeoffs and that, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. So we've got heaps of settings on the CAN bus pad for launch control, and we've also got the full drive button, which I can go through probably, I think there's 8 different settings of percentages to the front and rear wheels, from full-time two-wheel drive to 100% all-wheel drive, which is pretty awesome. So when we got on the dyno, our cooling issues were we couldn't get the thing to bleed. So long story short, we dropped all the coolant out, pulled the thermostat out, we drilled holes in it, which I'd already had holes drilled in it, but we drilled a couple more, aimed them at the top, which you always do, but we couldn't get that thermostat to open to let the water flow through. So someone recommended that we vacuum the cooling system with the compressed air. It's a tool that goes on your radiator, and it pretty much pulls a huge vacuum through your cooling system, which is a good test for leaks. So a huge vacuum through the cooling system, we put a hose in a bucket of coolant, we then flip the taps, and the vacuum in the coolant system draws the coolant out of a bucket, and it bleeds your cooling system. So that's how we bled the cooling. After that, no issues at all. Fans worked and it was perfect. We did blow coolant everywhere. Like, my heart just sank when the coolant it was like, I went to grab the camera, I went to grab a hose, I went to grab rags, because you know what coolant does to aluminium. That was fun, it was a fun cleanup. So that was one issue, the cooling. The second issue is the catch can setup. And we didn't know much about billet blocks, and I do now, which is great because I do love them. And I think they have their place on a street car, but it's a lot of work. It is an extreme amount of work to get these things to work properly, correctly, and to look after them. So if you're not going for that show car look or a track car engine which you're beating the shit out of it, I think a cast block has its place. However, if you've got the budget to make a reliable, strong engine. Rightio, so we're done, finished on the dyno, thank God. It's got the car going really well. Some issues with the setup that I have, which was expected. It didn't go, the compressor, the turbo compressor is just way too small for it. Very restrictive, it's flow, it's old technology. So in layman's terms, it actually made pretty good power. It was under what I thought, but well, no, it was spot on to what I thought. I thought 650, 700. We've already been picking out some changes to go bigger and better, so stay tuned. Rightio, we finished on the dyno. Thank you to Sean at Ramsdell Racing. We're all sorted. Got some improvements to make, but we've made good power, which is nice. That Hollinger gearbox is... Now we got to go wash this dirty old girl. Time to get ready for Motorex. Got the Motorex Raceworks shirts on. And it's time to prep the car with some Maguire's products. We're going to give it a bath, give it a quick polish, get it ready. We don't have to go too crazy because the car will go down to the detailers when it leaves for Melbourne today. It leaves in like 4 hours, so we need to pull our finger out. Cool, so we're all loaded up, or just loading up. So the car's leaving for Motorex. What's the day? Sunday?
Yep.
So hopefully this arrives down in Melbourne in 2 or 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, and then we're off to Motorex. And man, I think when this car goes in the trailer, both Kelly and I will be relieved as, but it's been a hell of an experience and I'd do it again. There she goes. What a relief. See you at Motorex.